Okay, I'd now like to invite Stainton up to the podium. Cy is currently employed part-time as Family Services Manager for the Delta Association for Community Living. She splits her time managing a respite program and providing information, advice and support to families who have a relative with a developmental disability. Cy has worked in the disability field for over 30 years. In her spare time, Cy is a resource parent for the Family Support Institute, as well as a regular and enthusiastic volunteer for the Delta Youth Support Line Thrift Store. Lovely. Cy is married to Tim, has 3 gorgeous children, one of whom has a developmental disability. So, welcome to the
How do we get started here?
Okay.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Now, let's get this right. Do you want to help me set it up? Oh, I know, I'm too nervous. Look at the experts. I'm going to ask for help. So I just want to say a little bit, as I said about myself. I have very little experience of brain tumours, other than a dear friend of ours had one, which meant he had to have surgery and had his head stapled all the way around here. And when we saw him in hospital, my husband went to give him a kiss goodbye and got the zipper of his jacket that everything was okay. But yeah, I do have a child with a disability who's now 13, and I've learned to be an advocate because of what I want for my child. It's not necessarily what the system. Oh, sorry. So what I want for, where's that voice coming from? Okay. What I want for my child isn't necessarily what the system is prepared to give me. And it's a non-stop journey. It's a beautiful journey, I have to say that. But yeah, it does have its moments. So I'm here as a resource parent with the Family Support Institute. And it's a network of parents who all have children with special needs. Donna Diggins, whose daughter since then, no, her husband since then has died, she said the greatest reward along the journey for my family has been the ability to connect with other families who work together to guide and create a better life for all our sons and daughters. And I think that you being here today know the strength and the comfort you can get by sharing your stories and collectively advocating for better services for your children. Just as a matter of interest, how many people here have brain survivors over 19? 15? 10? 5? 0? Okay, thanks. So a little bit about the Family Support Institute. Basically, we're there to strengthen and support families, because we do believe that families are often the best resource to support one another. And we're everywhere. There's a network of about 160 of us throughout the province. Just about every community has one. We give our time voluntarily to support families, to advocate on their behalf. And we also have a very good library. We provide information. We have newsletters, and we provide a number of workshops. And you notice on the handout, if you want a handout, there's some there if you'd like to take them. And I just want to say we do have a little leaflet about ourselves, and the cutest kid on the background, that's my son about 8 years ago. So please do have a look at him. So just a little bit about advocacy. I'm sure on your journeys you've been advocating for many services, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating information that you already know. But advocacy is basically persuading others to do what you want, maybe challenging people in authority and trying to readdress the balance of power, trying to right wrongs, addressing unequal opportunities, and speaking to or pleading the cause of another. So usually it'll be your child, but you know through the work that you do, it may impact other families, which is always a good thing. Which is why I talk about advocacy strengthening communities, because your actions may change a system that's going to benefit all people. You'll be building alliances and networks with other people. Obviously, you're person-centred when you're focusing for your advocating for your child, but often the solutions come out are collective and can affect a lot of people. So if you have any questions, please just ask as I go along. So I think there's 3 elements of empowering somebody to be a good advocate. First of all, you need to be able to access the the needed resources. You have to be good decision makers and problem solvers, and you have to develop essential behavioural skills in order to change systems. So what you need to know is what are the resources and who are they from. I'm sure once you find out a relative or yourself, once you have a diagnosis, you're Googling, you're talking, you're trying to find out as much information as you can, which is good, but you also have to know a lot about the system that actually holds the resources. So primarily for people who have some kind of special needs or health issue, the services are often purely health focused, and I'm amazed at listening to the improvements and achievements that have happened for survivorship over the last 40, 50 years. However, health is, I say, the Mona Lisa piece in the big jigsaw. There's lots of other things in your life that you need to be in place for your child to have a good and successful life. So you may have to be battling health authorities, you may have to be negotiating with schools, you maybe have to negotiate with physiotherapists, special NCFD. As your child gets older, maybe other housing, whatever, you know. So it's always really important that you have a really good knowledge and understanding about that system, who holds the resources and how that system works. So, yeah, you have to research. You really need to know a lot about your condition or your illness, and you have to be current with the most latest research so that you know that you can advocate for most effective treatments. You probably have a huge number of assessments, and I think it's very important when these assessments occur that you automatically do get a copy of any of these assessments. And I just wonder if that's the norm. Do you usually get assessments and copies of doctors' reports? Well, you can ask for them. There's also a form at BCCH, which can be really hard to find, where you can actually sign, and the authority then, the BCCH is supposed to ensure that you do have copies, but it doesn't often work. Though I have found in discussion with doctors, if you request that you get a copy, you usually do. You're in a great parent support network. Honestly, it's a hard battle, but you can do it, you know. It's just that you have to make sure that, when you sign in and you get the list and you have to sign the form and show your card, there's usually a list of doctors on that form. So first of all, you want to make sure that they're the right doctors. Because when I was coming with my child when he was young, I had about 17 doctors. And a lot of them I felt I was doing more for them than they were doing for my son. So I want to make sure that as I moved on, that they didn't continually block up the system with reports that they didn't need. And I always add my name, always make sure that my name is added to that circulation list. And I usually do get reports now. Well, actually, I do from everything that I go to. But you have to ask, and good luck. The internet, yeah, that's a really good resource. Your child's professionals. You may have more than one, you may have many, you'll have nurses, you'll have social workers, you may have speech therapists, physiotherapists, you may have a mainstream support worker at school, you may have a teaching assistant. All these people can be your allies, and I think it's very important to try to build relationships with people. Sometimes you can be so angry, like, why is it my child? Why don't you understand what I need? Why can't you give me what's best for my child? And it's very important, like anything else in your professional life, you focus on what the problem is, not the person. That's really important, because in my experience, I'd say 98% of the people really do want to make a difference. They may not be in the position or power to do it, but just having them as an ally can help. Maybe they can write letters, maybe they can refer you to somebody who can actually help. So you've got your information worker here, so that's good. You've got the Brain Tumour Society, so you can be connected to some people. So you've got to know the players in the game and who holds the power and who influences those power. So usually your first point of call, I don't know, it may be your family doctor, it may be a neurologist, wherever they are, those are usually your first point of contact. And you need to know how the system works. So if you have a concern, you need to know where you go within the system, because we had a really bad experience here once with my son, which he nearly died, but he didn't. And I found it very complex and difficult to find a way to let them know that I had some concerns about some treatments that were offered and the treatments that weren't. So it's very important that you get to know who your advocates are, who in the system has maybe championed a cause that you would like to learn from. So I'm just talking a little bit about policy. Whenever you want to challenge something or change something, you really need to know what the policy is, how it works, how it's put into practice, because lots of people don't. People in the system may be working in the system, but may not actually be very familiar with the policy. And I have a lot of experience in education ministries, Ministry of Children and Families, and the Ministry of Social Development, and now which is called Social Innovation. But if you go in and read the policies, they're extensive. There's so many of them, and sometimes it can be quite difficult actually focusing in which is the one that's most relevant to you. Policy can be formal or informal, but formal policy follows a precise format, which you need to be familiar with if you want to change for something. So, policies derive usually from legislation, like the School Act, or I think there's the Health Act, Health and Community Care Act. And it can be based on funding decisions or funding formulas. It's enacted for various things. We have laws, we have fines, there may be contracts, partnerships, throne speech, and there's many others. Change in policy, I'll come to that later. So in the language of policy, there's three words that are quite important. If the policy says must, it must happen. If it should, well, it's supposed to happen, and there may be some incentives for it to happen. Or it may, and that's often the one, or reasonable, and sometimes on a sticking point, it can be very hard to make change because it's an optional policy interpretation, and that's where you need to gather your allies. So, you know, if you've got the knowledge, if you know how the system works, the next thing would be looking at how to make decisions, how to problem solve. So understanding your child's needs, you're the best people, you're living with it every day. So you know what's best for your child, and I think it's very important that you do listen to whatever your gut feeling is. You may not act on it, but I think as parents, you really do understand what your child's needs are. Whatever you're doing, I think it's really important to leave some kind of document or paper trail. If you can get your doctor's email or a professional's email, good luck. And I think that's a really good way of trying to keep track of what you're doing. Try and file all your documents, whether they're paper documents, emails, letters. What I tend to do is have different files on my computer. I scan or take pictures and make sure that I have easy access to them. As I said before, it's good to know good practices. Somebody once said to me, what's the difference between God and a doctor? Well, God doesn't think he's a doctor. So they may have extreme expert in a particular area and field, but outside that, maybe they don't. And I think that's one of the issues that people find as they get older. You may be dealing with a doctor that is an expert in the field of cancer, but may know nothing about diabetes, may know nothing about hyperpituria, but they will be making decisions. So I think it's really important that you know what the good practices are, you talk to different people to make sure that you have access and refer to the right people. Is there anybody here who's trying to change something at the moment? Is everyone happy with what they're getting? Yeah. Anybody who'd like to tell me?
I think there's a concern for a lot of us in this room about the transitioning out of these treatments into the adult world with partnerships for pediatric cancer shelters, and there is no interest in government having a link that's good. So that's a big concern.
Okay. Yep.
I know that the adult survivors out here now have are significant beneficiaries.
Okay.
And a lot of our teams that are coming through the system now who will be. This is our problem. That's a huge concern. How do we advocate?
Okay. Well, transitions are difficult all the way around, so you're not alone in that. With children with special needs, many of them, their funding just drops when they're 19. The services or the ministries or the Crown government organisations that hold the resources can be really underfunded. So it is always a battle. So that is an issue, you know, how do you get together to ensure that those services can be there for your children? And that's where I think collectively that you can advocate and try to change things. So you've educated your child's needs, you've studied the assessment. I think I've been over this. So what you have to think about, what is essential for my child if it's going through transition? What do you want? You want maybe to have a good home, the right supports, a good education, access to, if it's possible, some kind of financial supports. If there's an issue of whether or not that they're ever going to be work, and I think I noticed on the stats that quite a significant people may go on to be on income support or what's PWD, so it's very important that that paperwork is sorted out. But I tend to find in the health authority there are experts in health, which is great. But for some families, what you need is, you don't need a jolly good counselling, you don't need another assessment. What you may need is some support at home, so you can actually have a sleep, somebody can clean the kitchen, so because you've been up all night with your child. And those are things I think are missing in many areas of where there's children with supports. When we know there's so much money going into funding and research opportunities, but the day-to-day practical supports for families are often not there. And I just was having a little chat with a wonderful woman, actually, who is actually given her time to take care of her next-door neighbour's child so that the mom can get a break. And I thought, that's great, that's what lots of us really need. Trying to find it can be very difficult. So I mentioned about keeping notes, maintain a paper trail. If you go to meetings, or I'll come to meetings now, if you have to complain about something, I think it's really important that you do know the facts. Like I'm still smarting from paying $14.25 just to get out of the car today. You know, I think I'm here so often, and it used to be $6, then it's $8, now it's $14 a day. But I don't know what's the policy in that, you know. Can you get a pass? Is there a ticket? I don't know, but if I was concerned, those are the sort of things I would have to find out. And if you need to write about something, if you're unsure about something, first of all, what is the problem? And why is it a problem? And what's the solution? What can you bring to the table that is going to work? And if you have to write a letter, I've come home sometime, I've been so mad, and I'm like this on the computer, and I just step back, because if you're writing from a point of anger, you're not really being clear. So a draft is always good. Cool off, revise, get your partner to look at it. Maybe if you've got allies through other professionals, get them to have a look at it as well. And you can't demand when you're advocating. When you're advocating, you're usually negotiating. You have to, you know, many people that you come across aren't the funders, aren't the purse holders. They may be trying to do their best. They may not have the knowledge that you require to help you make a good decision. But that's where you're coming from. You're trying to negotiate. I think it's negotiating. It's really good. Whatever the problem, you could come from a position of complaining, but what you really want to think about, here's the problem, this is my solution. What do you think? Let's talk about how we can make this happen. And I've had very good success in doing that. Not always, but it does happen. And don't threaten. I think the strength of good advocacy is building positive and long-lasting relationships. Because if you're angry and if you piss people off, if they've got 10 phone calls to get through and 25 emails, if they know that it's going to be an unpleasurable experience dealing with you, you're going to be at the bottom of the list. And if they're busy that day, maybe they won't be able to get to respond to you. Then maybe they're on holiday and they're off sick. So you can just, you know, problems can just grow and grow. And the other thing I've noticed, which is really good to get things moving, to get to any doctor or to get any person in authority, you have to go through administration. There's no, you know, and often they are the gatekeepers. They're the ones who decide who gets what. They're the ones who may be managing the wait list for services. And those are the people that you usually have first point of call. Be pleasant, build a relationship, let them get to know you. And I've worked that in ways like for autism, you know, there can be an 18-month, 2-year wait list for autism, but I've managed to get an assessment in a month. And I think that was from me trying to build a strong relationship with Sunny Hill and acknowledging that, you know, people work hard, they're stressed, they're trying to do their best. But I know that my relationship helped me bump up to the top of the list. So that was a good thing for me. It's not a good thing for someone else because it means someone else has gone down the list. But use your tactics and strategy. You know, think about what you want. Try not to vent in a letter because people don't want to hear it. A lot of people know what the problems are. They hear them all the day. They're saying no. They're listening, so they don't want to hear that. Try not to make judgments about the quality of the person that you're writing to, or the quality of the services, or the quantity of the services. And try to be clear, short and factual. If you're writing a letter, don't make it longer than a page, because people are going to be like, oh man, I'm going to have to read this. They'll skim it. Also, it may be photocopied. Chances are that that page may get lost. So try to be clear and concise in your letter, and always request a timely response. So once you've acknowledged the good work that people are doing, you recognise that there's problems, this is how you see the problem, this would possibly be a solution, you'd like to get together to discuss how we can make it work. And please, I hope I could hear from you within 5, 10 working days and track that. Because if you leave it open-ended, maybe they won't get to it because something else is going to come up, another crisis is going to happen. And then log that, and you know when you can then go back and say, well, actually, I did write to you, you know, a week ago. I just wondered if you had my letter, how I had a chance to respond. It's good to get this documentation because you never know how far the advocacy issue is going to escalate. You may be able to sort it out there and then with your doctor or your therapist or your school, but it may have to go up and up the system. So you want to make sure that you have exhausted all possibilities on the way up. You can't go to the top with your complaint because all they're going to do is send it right back down to the first person who is managing it. Quite often the person that you might be maybe making a complaint about, or maybe trying to get resources from, the first person that's going to see that letter will be their manager. And as you know, with institutions and systems, they're strong, their networks are strong, and often they put themselves first. You know, they look after themselves, look after their staff. So you have to make sure that you do the right paperwork. So I've said you've done that, you know what the issue is, you've defined it, you've gathered some facts. Now find allies. You've got the Brain Tumour Society, you may have the Family Support Institute. You know, with 160 people, we've had to fight issues through health, education, ministries, whatever. We have great knowledge about various conditions. If we don't know it ourselves, there's somebody else who does. And most of the resource parents do advocate on behalf of their children and other families. Can I just go and get something to drink because my throat is really dry? So it's good to have an action plan about what you're going to do, who, where, when, why, what and how. Keep track of it. You can easily get distracted on these things. You know, there's another issue, you've got this focus, another issue comes up and you suddenly find that you're going sideways, when really the central issue, if you could address that, the other ones may take care of themselves. Invariably, you're going to have to meet with someone. It might be one-to-one initially, you may have to go to a case conference, you may be addressing a complaint, so you will go to some kind of meeting. So I think it's a really good idea to take someone with you, so you can focus on what the issue is and someone else can take notes. Sometimes in a meeting it can be so personal because you're dealing with about an issue that's affecting someone you love. You may not be able to listen to what people are saying, and you won't have the time to take notes about what the consequences are, the outcomes of the meeting are. So I think it's really good. For a woman, I have to say, take a man in a suit, because they will take notice of you more. It's sad to say, but as you go up hierarchies, quite often they're predominantly male. Many men are in the system, and I have noticed that usually if you bring a man with you, they'll sit up and listen. I don't like that, but that's sometimes the case. So, you know what you want, think about what your bottom line is going to be, and don't go under that. And keep that in the back pocket when you start. You know, if you need something, then think about what's the minimum that I'm going to accept. And be wary when meetings. Quite often, if it's a serious issue that you are going in to discuss, there'll be pre-meeting meetings. You know, you'll be called to a meeting at, say, 11:30. When you get there, everybody's been in there since 10:30. So, you know, what's going on, you know? And so that's where your allies can come in. If it's a meeting like a case conference with care, you may have a social worker, physiotherapist or whatever, a doctor. If they're your allies, they may be able to help you and explain to you what's going on. So that's where you try not to go it alone. You try to form alliances with other people. And be clear about what the purpose of the meeting is, and how much time is planned, and where are you on the agenda. You know, you're at the very bottom, the last 5 minutes, or you're at the top. Because sometimes what you'll find is you go to a meeting, you have to sit through so much stuff. By its time it comes to you, there's no time. Or you'll find professionals are going. They'll be there for the beginning of the meeting, but they've all got different things to do. So by the time it comes to you, the people that you may want to talk about have already left the room. So if you can, through your negotiations and skills, see if you can be on the top of the agenda. And make it clear about how much time you want. You want 10 minutes, 15 minutes, don't ask for an hour. So that you can get your voice heard by the right people, and also bring all the information you need to back up what you're advocating for. Some people actually bring a picture of their child, because that keeps that person focused. Because your speciality, you know, it could be the brain tumour, it could be the kidney, and that's maybe the major focus of that person, but you're looking at the whole person, and it's important to remember that. And sometimes it's good just to remember, you know, to bring that to the meeting. So I always I know that he's 13 now, but, you know, it's a cute picture. At the meetings, it can be scary, the whole room. Sometimes you've talked to one person, you've arranged a meeting, you go in, there's maybe 12, 15 people in there. So that can be quite scary. So if it's good, they'll do the introductions. Sometimes it's quite nervous, you're sitting there and everyone's chit-chatting about everything and you're just sitting there waiting. So if people don't take the trouble to introduce you, then you take that step. And there's ways you can do it in an assertive and welcoming way. So people think, okay, yeah, well, she's not going to be lying down, you know, she's not going to be someone I can walk over. So it's important, because you might not even know some of the people in the room, you know. How are they involved with my child's care? Ask for a copy, request a copy of the minutes after the meeting, so you know exactly what's going on. If you're not sure about something, just ask for clarification. If it gets too much, ask for a little break, because talking about your child is such an emotive and emotional thing. And there's a song, Dancing for Mental Health by Will Powers, and it says, I'm sorry, I'm not ready to handle what I think is coming, you know. And it's good sometimes just to take that break. Also on the phone, you can get blocked and blocked and blocked on the phone. It can get so frustrating. Or you get the information that you already know, but you're not getting through to the right person. Don't get mad, you know, say like, oh, I'm sorry, the doorbell's gone. Oh, I have to go and see to my child. Slow down, put the phone down, take a breath, come back when you're strong. I've lost it in meetings. I've ended up crying. You feel bad for yourself, and you know people are pitying you, and then people don't see what's really important. So try to be strong and calm. The more you do it, the better you're going to be. Yeah, be constructive. Don't blame. You didn't do that. I've been waiting for this from you for 6 weeks. It's like, use I statements. I'm really concerned that we're not fully recognising the needs of my child, and I wonder if you'd be willing to listen to some suggestions I have. I really like your opinion on what you think. Bring people in. Help them to think that maybe they've come up with a solution as well, because that works, it does work. Try not to personalise comments if they have facts wrong, and believe me, we have this all the time. My son's name is Augustine. They think so often, we've been coming to children's for 13 years, we still think he's a girl. You know, because it's a boy's name, we call him Gus, but on the chart, so you have to check, and if they refer to him as a girl, I say, well, actually, he's a boy, you know. Oh, but it's a girl's name. I said, no, that's Augustina. Augustine is his name, and we call him Gus. But if something's wrong, yeah, make it correct, you know, because you don't want it to go down as it's harder to change later once it's in writing. Now, my brother-in-law died of AIDS, and one of my doctors, in the diagnosis for my child, put this down. And I just went, what relevance does it have to my son's global developmental delay? She goes, well, you know, I just thought it's interesting. I said, it is interesting, but it has absolutely nothing to do with my son. It took about 3 meetings to get it removed, but I did get it removed because, and then I'm always wary about how much information we share, you know. What are the pertinent, the most important information that you need to share? What does my brother-in-law dying of AIDS 20 years ago got to do with my 13-year-old son? You know, so it's like, stick to the point. I have to say that doctor, although it was a battle, she has been a champion for my son, and I acknowledge what she's done. So in the meeting, try to summarise what's going on. What are the conclusions? What are the commitments? Confirm who's doing what when. So yeah, well, I will take that up with the district nurse. Okay, so who's taking it up, and when do you think you could be able to do that by? You know, so you can get some of these facts down. The other thing I do for the next steps, you usually have someone's email. So much stuff is done via internet now. You usually will be able to get most documents or most meeting stuff in email. I write to a person, whether it's the chair of the meeting or my advocate in the meeting, and I say, I just want to confirm the outcome of this meeting before the minutes have come out. Okay, so I understand that blah, 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 blah. Please let me know if I've made correct assumptions about what's going on in the meeting. So there you go, you've got it. Sometimes they find it helpful because they're the ones who have to transpose the meetings. If you've got it on email, they can cut and paste it. You know, it's easier, you're helping them out. So always try to confirm anything, whether it's a conversation in school about who's going to do what, that you actually confirm, so you know that that's what's going to happen. Also, they know then that you're on the case, you are a concerned parent, and you will be coming back with stuff, so they're more likely to take it seriously what you're saying. And you may not get what you want, which is often the case. So what happens next? Ask them, what do we do now if I'm unhappy with this decision? What is the process I need to follow? So they'll tell you what to do. Every authority, every service now will have a complaints procedure, an internal complaints procedure. And that's what they need to follow. So you need to familiarise yourself with that. You need to know the chain of command to see which way you go. And that's the way you have to go up and up. It may take forever, it may take a long time. After that, there's external complaints procedures like the Ombudsman, the Advocate for Children and Youth, whatever they are that you can actually address. But you do have to follow the route. Some people want to go to the press straight away. I think it depends on the severity of what you're doing, but if you do go to the press, quite often you're burning internal bridges. So see how much cooperation and relationship building you can get within the organisation before you actually go. And again, you can be news for 5 minutes on Global, and then you're forgotten, but the people that you're complaining about won't have forgotten. So if there is anything, it's often good to have an organised campaign, collectively getting families together, having a strategic action plan about how you're going to promote your cause. So as I said earlier, the best thing you can do, form good, strong relationships. You may hate the person, you may have no personal respect for them, but they're professional. In our professional lives, I'm sure there's people like that we don't like working with, but we can maintain a professional approach because this is what we have to do to get on. There'll be people in your lives that you will be so blessed to have come into your lives because what they can do for your children, and those are the relationships that probably will last. Always try to project a positive image, you know, be upbeat, try to be concerned, try not to deal with it on a personal level, although it's very personal. Manage your language, your temperament and your body language. I work with many families who have children with disabilities, maybe 300 or 400 a year. I work with, whether it's a simple phone call or a long, protracted advocacy story. And I know that sometimes you meet angry parents, and you have to get over that. You know, they're so angry that their child has a disability. And it's terrible, it's like a grieving process. You have to get through that. Nobody wants to work with angry people, they're scary. Be good, learn about listening skills. It's so hard sometimes, you're trying to think about what you're going to say next, and somebody's talking to you, which is why it's good to have two people in the meeting. Listen and acknowledge what people are saying. And a good way to build relationships is to rephrase back to them what they're saying to you, you know, so they know that you're listening, they know that you're actually taking notice of them. Try to be assertive and not aggressive. And there's lots on the internet about that. I'm not going to go into about good listening skills, good assertiveness, or if you need to look them up, you can just look them up. And what you're working for is good, strong relationships where you can collaborate and you can negotiate. You try to max out those before you go further and further and further up the road. And sometimes there's battles that are just not worth fighting. If you have like a teaching assistant that has absolutely no interest in your child, and you have a teacher that has no interest in your child, you may just have to write that year off and think, well, there's always next year. But who knows? Sometimes you just have to pick your battles. So also try to understand where people are coming from. There are jobs worth people who are just there, they're making money, but they're very, very few and far between in my experience. Once you get to know people, you know, people are in this field because of their interest and compassion for working with other people, and that sometimes it's hard to remember that, but most people are. You never know what's going on in their lives, you never know what stress they're under either. Yes, we are supposed to keep that behind, but try to seek people's understanding of where they're coming from. As I mentioned earlier, validate, or I understand, yes, I know it's really difficult for the school district when my son has generated 20 hours of teaching support, but I'm only actually getting 5. I understand that all the pressures and you're trying to do the best to manage that. But there's ways around that. As I said earlier, stick to what you're fighting for, don't get sidetracked. Sometimes people will actually do that because it's easier. If they confuse you, you spend so much time getting the facts right that you've actually lost track of what you're actually fighting for. And again, you know, offer resources, I think at whatever problem, come up with a solution, talk to your child, talk as a family, what's the best possible solution that's going to be for your child, and that's the one that you go for. And you have to work together in all this. You go alone, you stay alone, and trying to get those, any changes can be extremely difficult. So effective partnering. Grief is one, I haven't got that down there, but when you're grieving for a tragedy in your life and you're trying to work through it, you need to spend time to take care of yourself and work through that. You can be very fearful. I mean, I'm probably freaked out being up here in this big formal place, you know, I'm not used to this. We're so human service, we're all touchy-feely sitting around the table, you know. So be aware and acknowledge your fears and anxieties and try to put them aside. Past experiences can really influence how you interpret what's happening. You know, I'm still wary about coming here. I'm very careful, I'm very clear, I'm very polite, but I'm much more, I feel much more conscious of, you know, not everybody knows everything. There's often an imbalance of power, you know, and I think also in the health authority, they're the experts, you're the patient. Whereas in social services, sometimes there's a bit more acknowledgement that families are the best resources that you can actually work with. And there's often assumptions made about your child, about you. They can be on your race, your economic bracket, your understanding of English, your temperament, your child's condition, and try to be aware of those and try not to make assumptions. It's two-way, you know, don't always make assumptions about the person that you're dealing with. Try not to label and blame. You may feel it inside, you know, or that person's a complete idiot. Why did I get that doctor? Or, but that's the one you've got, you know, but you can change it. You know that you can actually change. You can actually change your care providers. And be clear about inaccurate information. People in the system may not understand the system. You think of many forms that you've got to go through. There's a form for everything these days. People may not understand the whole system. So it's up to you to learn and collect accurate information. It's up to you as well to check any information of your child, any reports, operational procedures or whatever, that they are fully accurate. My friend has got a child with disability, and actually she changed the system here, which was really lucky, because her son only weighed about 50 pounds, and when he went for a surgery, they got the weight wrong. They put it in 50 Ks. So he had 50 Ks of anaesthetic. They were very cooperative about it. I was like, oh my gosh. But I think they actually changed every scale after that has to be in kilograms, because that could have been a very serious mistake. But everyone was willing to work together. There was no, they acknowledged an issue, they acknowledged what had happened, and they were willing to work together, and it was sorted pretty quickly. Lack of choice, yeah, as you get to transition, that happens all the time. For a good life, there are many domains that we live in. It's where we live, who we spend our time with, how we work, our health, our education and our leisure. And for a good life, we have to look at all those things. And I know one of the issues for many families is who's going to take care of my child when I'm gone? Who's going to be there to advocate, to make sure that that person has a good life? And that lady who mentioned the representation agreements, which is a good supported decision tool to make sure that someone is taking care of some legal areas of authority like health, social care, finance and legal. But the best way that anybody is going to survive and have a good life is by the relationships that they form and the social networks they form. These are the natural safeguards that make our lives good. We meet people, we marry people, we have our children, that's our network. And there's a lot of work, I think, to be done to have those safeguards in place to ensure that there's the right networks and supports around our children. It's usually up to families to make that happen. It's nice to see that there's opportunities and services that can initiate that, but it's really up to us to help form those relationships. So yeah, there is a lack of choice. When you turn 19, it's very difficult. There are lots of opportunities though, and again, you need to research those, like what school opportunities are there, what high school opportunities, what tertiary education, what's Langara, what's Conflin offering, what's the university offering, what's about the disability supports in each of these colleges, because most places are very good at providing additional supports for people to get through colleges. Yeah, distance travelling, that's a huge issue for people when you have to always come down here for services. And yeah, moving here is not an easy option for many people. Like, who can afford to buy a house in the Lower Mainland if you're living up in Prince Rupert? It's very difficult. And be careful of attitudes, theirs and yours, you know, like what do you want to get out of this meeting? You want the best for your child, and that may mean letting some things go, but trying to build relationships, because that's the way you can get things done. So, and I'd say, just to sum it up, the things that you have to be are pleasant. You may not feel pleasant. Be persistent, because sometimes battles can take a long time to resolve something, and just persevere. You know, keep going. Form allies, try again. If one door shuts, well, just find another route. Has anyone got successful advocacy things that they've done? No?
It's seemingly like this year working with the school.
Oh, right.
And the school board, it's been an educational experience in itself. And one thing promised and basically nothing happening. But then learning how to, for instance, the limited point, somebody mentioned just was close or carbon copy everything to the person you're dealing with, to their superiors, maybe their superiors. That seems to get things done.
Yeah.
I feel like just things like that, learning things like that.
Yeah, I think that the school system, you really need to understand the chain of command. When I came to this country, I knew absolutely nothing about education, and I worked really hard. I joined the PAC, joined the DPAC. I'm on the Special Programmes Advisory Committee now for my district. I studied the School Act, you know, just to know what my rights were. And I built relationships, you know, and it's hard because people are always changing. And yeah, I've been to school board as well. I occasionally go to the school board just to listen to what they say, and I know it's kind of sad, but and every year when their budgets come out, well, not every year, I didn't this year, I actually go and plead a cause. So I know lots of them. I've built good relationships, but it's hard, you know. One time I took a little hyacinth because I said, this is my child. It's up to you whether it's going to blossom or whether it's going to die. They still talk about it.
Well, the point to me is then sort of being honest thing. You think you've had a success, you think in your mind, well, go and establish something or be against something, it's just going to happen. It doesn't happen.
Yep. So I would suggest that.
This is part, like, our daughter's done a really good job this year of advocating for herself. So she'll say, wait a minute, I don't have large pension or whatever paid. Whereas, well, most teachers have been excellent. The odd one just doesn't care.
Yes.
And we'll leave her and then forget totally what they said at the meeting. Like, as soon as they walk out of the meeting, they've forgotten what they said.
So I think that's why it's good to take notes and confirm at the end of the meeting, and then.
But you're asking about success. We thought we just had some success, and yet it wasn't.
No.
It wasn't really success.
So I've had that as well, but I'd say what you do is like confirm, because you must have some allies, whether it's a teacher, your mainstream support, your TA,
Yes.
and then like everyone's on email in the district. I mean, you can actually work out most people's emails, because ours is sd36.bc.ca, it could be sd34.bc.ca. So you know that basically, if you can't find it on the internet, you can actually find.
But it's a living organism, because it has to be tended to constantly. And,
Yep.
And the person, your daughter or whoever, has to be talking to you about it or talking to them. It has, because otherwise things will slip.
I know.
And then at the end of the year, they say, well, I never had that. My daughter started saying about some subjects she never had it. And we said, what? And then she, we talked to the council and they said, oh, I thought everything was okay. Like, then everybody goes into that mode. Like, well, I thought everything was good, or I thought we did it, or didn't we do that? And,
so
yeah.
that's where you have to be the champion,
Yeah.
and it's like confirm and then check up every so often. I'm just popping in to see how the viewpoint is working in the classroom, or thank you for arranging for it to be blah, 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 blah. But it's the families who actually keep those wheels driving. Because people assuming other people are going to do stuff, and it's like, oh, I thought it was happening.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was happening.
Yeah.
They may not have the time to check themselves. Be a good, strong advocate, they will.
Yeah.
Because they know that you're going to be coming back at some stage. And
Just wanted to share with everyone what I met from our child. She's 20 and we're transitioning. And basically, we've been going elementary school just because she's been so sick for the last 20 years. And so we approached the Ministry of Education, wrote a letter, and got Mary Lepond.
Mary Turpin-Lafond, yeah.
Lafond.
Mary Ellen Turpin-Lafond, yeah.
And so we are at an independent school. And so basically what we wrote about is that our child didn't have the opportunity to even attend school. And how could she possibly leave the system at elementary school, not having the opportunity to finish even secondary school, even transition into secondary. So what has happened is that the ministry now is actually have a policy in place, and my daughter is probably was the pilot project last year, and she's now has been accepted into secondary school at 20. And the policy now is that children learn at different styles, and they quoted about the conditions of, complex kids who didn't have the opportunity to finish. And so now children are not, if you haven't, gotten your dogwood certificate, they recognize that children learn at different ways, and they can now stay in the system to achieve to the best of their ability. And that policy has only just come down in the last month. And so for the public school system, there is a position paper on the internet that talks about this, and all the schools districts have actually bought onto it. And so that policy is in place.
Well done. So there's your education champion. She's changed the world.
Oh, no.
You know,
Just
yeah.
changed it for my daughter.
Yeah, but you've changed it for everybody.
Passion.
The thing is, but it's passion. That keeps you going. I should have put passion down there as well, I guess. But what's changed for your daughter, it's been a personal solution, but it's a collective response, because now you have to make sure that everybody gets that policy.
Exactly.
Maybe you can send it to Brain Tumour and I can send it out so other families know that opportunity.
And it should be, because it's on the internet. If you look under, the Ministry of Education Special Needs, the position paper is there.
Oh, right. But
And
send
there
it to
was,
us.
in the
easier.
position paper, they talk about the policy coming down 2014-15, but last week the independent schools got the policy. So the policy is now in place.
That's great. That's good. I was going to say, because the principals may not know what exactly is going on, they're pretty busy. So there's your education expert. Don't know.
So I've had various instances so I don't have all this information.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention when my daughter was in a particular school, I wanted more support for her, and the principal wasn't supportive. So I wrote a letter to the Ministry of Education, and I showed it to my principal. She said, "You'll never get that. You'll never see to this. This will never happen, and you're wasting your time." I said, "Well, I don't care." And I sent this letter through to the ministry, and we actually did get more funding. So the point I'm trying to make is don't let anybody stop you from continuing to advocate. Don't get blocked by people's attitudes along the way.
Yeah, that's right. You just got to keep going. You've got to persevere.
I can probably predict, but I think that's just one thing I wanted to kind of add to this is it is important to make those relationships. When we're talking about the schools here, I had a lot of teachers that were really difficult about these little things, little change that they had to make, but make relationships with people that matter and will do something for you. And that's the biggest thing. I had such an amazing guidance counselor that totally fought for me the entire way through high school. It was amazing. So it's not so much about making amazing relationships with everyone. It's choosing who's important here that I need to really make those relationships with and make sure they're doing what they say they're going to do the whole way through. So don't waste your energy on everyone. I think was what I learned through that. So
Yeah,
it's just that.
that's great. That's right. Seek your allies and champions and build relationships. So that's great. So I know is it time running out? Has anyone got any other questions? Good luck.